No worries.
Got a routine in the room.
You guys good? Good to go?
Good.
Perfect.
So one of the big talking points this week has been Blake Groupie again and everything like that. Just kind of where are you in that process, letting him work his way through and kind of kick himself out of the rut?
Yeah, I think we're exactly where we were after the New England game, where he came out and he had a good performance. And, so we had a miss in Chicago, 53. We wanted to make it. Conditions weren't ideal. But I think we're in the same spot as where we were last week.
It's not a situation where it's a worsening concern or anything like that. Like you're comfortable letting him continue to kind of.
I am, yes.
Yeah.
I am.
Well, you mentioned Chicago, the conditions, 50 plus. Is that one that maybe typically you kind of forget about more quickly, like given the context of the season, people remember?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Like if we hadn't been talking about the misses before that, or you go out there, Chicago, it's 53, and the wind gusts for the guys that were there right before the field goal happened, you brush it off. But because of the prior misses before that, it's going to be discussed more, and but we're comfortable where he's at, and like I said, he had a good week in practice leading up to New England. And then after that game going into Chicago week, he hit 100%. He practiced yesterday 100%. So we just need to continue and pick up from where we left off at New England game and go make the kicks. And shouldn't be any conditions at home this week in the indoor. And so the other thing I was pleased about, I don't know, like we took a look at is, we had some field goal protection where it wasn't as clean as we wanted to be. And I thought that our guys, the offensive line, really responded and did a great job in that Chicago game as well. And they had some good rushers. Obviously they had blocked the kick already this year. So I think we're making progress in the right direction.
The young guys who are getting a lot of playing time this year and development. Is there anybody who, not a lot of stats show up, like when you guys are reviewing some young players who are making a really big impact on your units that stand out and deserve the attention for what they're doing?
Yeah, listen, I think there's some things that'll go unnoticed, right? I think Danny Stutzman has done a good job, but he's had some stats, had some tackles, right? But I think that when you take a look, in like Quincy Riley, for example, like he plays the corner position on punt return for us. And I think he's done a good job of holding up their gunners and giving us a chance to kind of get some punt catches there. I think when you take a look, it's some unsung things like we've had, whether it be Kelvin Banks or Torricelli, like on the field goal protection, like those guys, it's an adjustment. Those things are, new for them at the level of which teams are going to rush field goals. So, but, there's been a bunch of young guys, and I think some of it a little bit gets lost when you take a look, like I take a look at Isaiah Stallbird and Jalen Ford, for example. Like neither of those guys had a lot of reps last season. I think both were under 100 total reps, so like they're getting great exposure and experience and starting to make some plays. Like I'm really proud of Jalen, production-wise the past 2 games. He's really stepped it up and played better for us. And so I think, there's a bunch of young guys that are playing and getting better. And a lot of times it's harder in the special teams aspect to see. It's easy to notice, okay, I go make the tackle, or shoot, I missed the tackle and give up a big play. Like those are the glaring things that get seen. And but there's a lot of other things, whether it's the blocking or the holding up, or just doing their job in a coverage phase of being where they need to be and setting an edge and turning it back so that somebody else can get credit for the tackle. But I think we've improved each week as far as how we're playing and especially in our coverage. We're getting better there, and I'm pleased. And I think guys are starting to really figure it out, and hopefully we can continue to just try to get better every week. That's all we're looking to do.
The dynamic kickoff changing this year to 35. Has that, since there's a lot more returns and everything this year versus last year, does that even kind of force you to come up with new ideas on the fly a little bit differently this year than last year even, or are you approaching it any differently? Is the team spending any more time on it or anything like that?
Yeah, we are. I think it's forcing you to try to have a couple more answers in your return game because of the amount that are getting returned, and you don't want to keep giving the same look over and over. I think the challenging part, and it's for all teams, it's not just for the Saints, each week becomes the guys that have to block, trying to get them in the proper matchups, right? Because that's one of the things on kickoff we do. If you ever notice, we move guys around in different spots so that we're trying to get a matchup favorable for us. And so when you're on kick return, all of a sudden you'd really prefer not to have one of your safeties blocking one of their bigger, D end or edge players. So that's where like the creativity and also being able to be sound and everybody understanding what we need to do schematically, but also trying to put them in a favorable matchup that they're able to have a chance to have success in the blocking scheme. And each week that changes because really from a KOR standpoint, you have to adapt to what the kickoff team puts out there. So if they're putting 6 big guys or 7 big guys and 3 skill players, we try to, do the same and match up from a body type standpoint. And that's where, your roster management comes in as far as what players are up and active on game day that you can use if you need to try to go bigger or something like that.
Have you seen teams like tinker with it more this year than they did last year because just the penalty for touchbacks and everything? Like, are they being a little bit more creative?
Yeah, I think they are. I think so. Yes, I do. I think teams, especially in the kickoff phase of it, right, are being more creative as far as obviously we see the types of kicks that you're getting, but then also the different types of schemes. Like if you watch, there's a lot of pick schemes because you're so close. Kind of like I look at it as like, when the defensive line runs a pass rush game on 3rd down, right, and they're like picking the guard or tackle for each other to try to get home on a sack. There's a bunch of that's showing up as well that you have to try to be able to prepare and practice for. And I think we've tried to incorporate a couple new things in our install meetings as far as like putting the slide up there of who the bodies are and like the jersey numbers above it and who's going towards who, and because it could be different people having to do different things in our return scheme based off of matchups and just trying to rep it. And it's a lot of times, a lot of that has to occur in a meeting because you only get so many full speed reps in a practice week when it comes to those phases. So,
What are some of the factors you look at when you're deciding who you send back there to return kicks? Obviously, without Kendre, there'll be some change. I know Bayless is back on the active. So, what kind of goes into that?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple things, right? I think you want somebody that is going to make a really good decision of when we need to field the ball, when we don't need to field the ball. You have to be able to literally field the ball, right, with the different kicks that are coming. So those things are critical. And then you're also looking, obviously, for somebody who has the ability to make a positive play in the return game, whether it be because of speed or being able to break a tackle or something like that. And then, the other fact that comes into it, too, is you have to have guys back there that also are able to block because the guy who doesn't catch the ball is going to have to, be able to block one of those guys coming down there. And, again, schematically, we try to do our best to put him on a matchup that's going to be somebody that's, one of their, we perceive as like their guy playing the safety, so he doesn't have to go try to take on a big guy. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And then, again, it goes back to, who do you have up on game day to be able to give you all those things from the 48 you have available.
Just going with Devin last week on the fly, was that, for a rookie to be in that situation, what kind of made you feel like he was the choice to?
Yeah, I think he had practiced at it last week. We had started getting him some practice back there, and I think, he provides good decision making. He's smart. He makes good decisions there. He has the ability to be a blocker. And then I think, what our job is schematically is what does he do well, right? So he's not like a blazer that you want to try to cut it all the way back to the field or something like that, but he does run hard and he's able to be successful in some downhill type of returns. And so when the ball goes to him, we want to try to be able to get that scheme implemented. And that's another part of that goes into it, right? Like you may have a call one way, but they kick it to the other way. And then how do you able to adjust and get the blocks and that sort of thing that you need?
In recent weeks, Nephi has been available for your special team side. Just how much value does he bring as somebody that's been, a part of the scheme for a while?
Yeah, look, I think Nephi brings a ton of value for us. He's kind of like a calming force. He's been and played a lot of football, special teams wise. He understands it. He's very smart, and he kind of helps put all of it together. He's very good in the punt protection game for us. And then he gives you, another guy that does a good job in coverage. And I think that is the experience factor that when we started this talking about the young guys that they're gaining on special teams is so different than anything that they've been accustomed to in college. And really the only way that you kind of get better at it is by doing it. So you're going to have some good plays, you're going to have some mistakes, and that's the thing we're just trying to do a good job of is pointing out, all right, well, here was the mistake, how do we correct it? here was good. How do we continue to do it good from a special team standpoint? And, there's only so many snaps in the preseason that some of these young guys got. And in the preseason, it's really, really vanilla from a special team standpoint as to, there's not a lot of schematic stuff that's going on. So it's a learning curve for them, and I think we're doing our best to get them ready to go. All set? Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
What did you see with the run defense last week? And Kellen was saying something about kind of the backside contained. That was maybe an area.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly it wasn't good enough. It was a poor performance from us in that phase, certainly, and that's where we fell short in the game. And I think the backside, a lot of those zone runs, and it was a collective effort in the front seven. That's where we fell short. and obviously anytime they can control the game that way, it's going to be hard to win because we played plenty well enough in the passing game and on third down and in the red area, but they were able to control the ball, and we got to get better from it.
I know you'd like to ideally control both aspects of this, but are you seeing more of a problem with like yards before contact or like yards after contact?
Well, in this game, we weren't good enough. There were a couple runs that split, where the technique in the front and the execution of the scheme fell short. I need to coach better, and we need to play better. But this was this game was, our poorest performance in the run game. I thought we had been solid all season long, but wasn't good enough in this game.
This might be oversimplifying it, but it seemed like they were able to double team both interior tackles, and the edges were really far away. Is that a factor in terms of the width when you're trying to defend that scheme?
Yeah, I mean, our edges needed to close faster, for sure. We didn't close well enough on the backside, and that's kind of what he was alluding to. And I think, between how we started inside out but then closing outside in, that's where, the problems came. It wasn't a tackling issue. It was just the execution of our technique and the scheme, particularly when we were in a nickel defense, So, again, need to improve.
You signed on to this job and had 2 veteran safeties up at the back end of this defense. Now you've got a pretty young secondary. Just how have you seen them grow over the course of years?
Yeah, Ross, I think that's been, I think one of our biggest highlights is the way that group has improved from game 1 to the last one. And I thought in the game against Chicago, I thought we'd really defended in the passing game at a premium level. And I felt like that aspect gave us a chance to win that game, the way we defended in the passing game, third down in the red area. And I thought that the way that they plastered in that game on some of the loose play downs, I thought that there were a couple plaster clinic reps against a tough quarterback who's created a lot of big offense. And then I think certainly with Quincy's interception on the third down, I mean, that was a big-time NFL break, and gave our team a lift. And I felt like early in the game our guys really contested and made it tough on them, And so I think we definitely need to build on that. And, as that group has seen more, I think they've played better, gained more confidence, gotten more time on task within the scheme. And that's the way it needs to stay, keep that consistent improvement. But I thought you saw the playmaking in the passing game from that group. And I thought, the run defense certainly wasn't good enough, but I did think our secondary tackled well in that game. So that's also a good sign.
A couple of those passes, to the flag, or I don't know if they were wide screens or whatever, it looked like Chase was about to chump a couple of them. Were you guys trying to time one, or was his get off just that crazy on a couple of those plays where it looked like he was in the passing lane?
Yeah, I think combination. I think on a couple of those downs, those were kind of RPO downs, quick passing game downs, and I think based on that formation, it kind of gave him a hint that it could be coming. But you got to give credit to Chase. I mean, he had the instincts and the timing to go make that play. And as you guys saw during training camp, I mean, he did that a lot during training camp too. He's kind of got that knack of seeing the ball and knowing how to match the hand. And, again, I think you saw us playmaking, in the game in that way on Sunday.
Would you describe Mayfield as a scrambler? There's been a couple instances this year where he's just kind of slipped out of a couple.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of those instances too.
Yeah, he's a fearless competitor in the pocket. And I think that he's got really good instincts in the pocket. I think he can feel the rush, but he can also see the openings that he needs to attack, and he can get there. And then I think he's got a very strong lower body, so he's a very hard guy to tackle because he's a bigger guy than you think. So you factor in all that, and then his competitive spirit, and he's a tough guy to bring down. And then what he's done a great job of this year is when he breaks the pocket, he's had a lot of rippers in the passing game. It's not just been scrambling to run. It's a lot of downfield explosions that they've been able to create on those loose plays. So, he's having a hell of a season for them, and that's a big reason why.
You take some of the success you had in the scramble game last week, kind of build on that, the plaster and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's every week right now in the NFL, and you do have to build on it. And, your rush has got to be tied together. It's not just going to come down to the rush. It's going to be the rush and the coverage working together. And then hopefully you can mix it up, throughout the game on them so that those opportunities are few and far between. But if you're going to win, you're going to have to win a lot of those tough, contested downs. And, hopefully we can build on it from last week, like you said.
Is this sort of team kind of have to be ready for like, the vertical element of this offense? And specifically the way Baker plays in it?
Yeah, I think that's what the tape's telling you. The tape's telling you that, they're attacking, the deeper part of level 2 and 3, and the deep in breakers, the deeper outside the numbers type throws, 7 cuts and posts, and they've been able to get vertical in the passing game. I think Josh is doing a good job coordinating that offense, and Baker, I think you're seeing his experience, and then the quality of their receiving group. I think that they have a lot of quality in that group. They've done it with a lot of different people. It's a deep group, and a lot of people are touching the ball. So they're definitely pushing it for sure.
Kind of follow up on that, like they've missed Evans and Godwin for a large chunk, but they've had all these young receivers step up. What have you noticed kind of from them?
Yeah, well, the young guy from Ohio State is playing at an extremely high level. I think everybody had a lot of love for him coming out of the draft. I know studying the secondary players in the draft, he was a guy that, I was trying to watch the secondary players that were playing against him. So he's been a great fit. And, Sterling Shepard's played a lot of years in this league at a high level in the slot. So I think his experience has shown up. And then they've got a lot out of this. Tez Johnson, too, has been a real spark plug for them. So they've got good tight end group, too. And then their backs, similar to, I think, New England, their backs are touching the ball a lot. Bucky and Rashad in the screen game and the choice, underneath game.
This might be a stupid thought, like on the Bugle, like with how defense has changed, more zone, like as opposed to like Seattle 3 beat the man on the outside. Like has like the value of a receiver changed at all? Like is it more about guys that can play in space than just like body up and beat press man? Like do you have to be able to do maybe a little bit more now?
Yeah, I think that you're on to something. I think the positionless receivers are more. I think the style of receiver that offensive coaches want to use, guys that aren't just outside the red line players, because, there's more ways to take away an outside receiver than an inside receiver, So if that receiver can move around the formation, especially in the middle of the field, there's more ways for him to touch the ball, and there's less ways for defenses to take him away. I think that even the big receivers now that you're seeing that are, 6'2", 6'3" plus, you're seeing them in the slot. And I think one of the examples that makes sense to me from New Orleans, a New Orleans fan's perspective is what Marcus Colston did here for so long. When you have 6'4", 6'5" in the slot, that's a dangerous player. I was fortunate to be around Keenan Allen, who's he's broken a bunch of records, and Keenan Allen's 6'3". So that's tough for a slot corner to deal with a lot of times. It's a matchup problem with that type of size in the slot. So, I think that, your point's well taken.
Are you guys seeing tangible benefits from Danny Stutzman's, like, just playing time every week, just very few plays for him, and how have you seen him grow from those opportunities?
Yeah, I think within his snaps, he's been productive, and he's really stood out on the silent tape. And that's what's going to continue to earn him opportunities. Is going to give him the confidence, I think, like we talked about last week. And, I think the same thing is said for special teams. When he gets that special teams opportunity, he's been very productive in that phase too. So the more he plays, I think the confidence is going to come in the playmaking and certainly the experience, of seeing more live. And, we're pleased with his progress.
Brandon, how has Alante played in your mind this year?
Jeff, I think the last 3 games he's been really steady for us. I think he's given us a lot of matchup flexibility in the slot. I thought last week you saw his tackling. I thought he had a couple really good slot cover reps. It's been quiet for him, and I would say that that's a positive thing. It's been quiet, but I do think throughout the season what you guys have been able to see is he's won a lot of tough downs in man-to-man for us, on third down. There's a bunch of ones that stand in my mind, but probably yours too. But he's been able to win a lot of the tough downs too. So I think these last 3 games he's really, gotten into a comfort zone, into a good rhythm, and is playing well, like in all phases: perimeter force, tackling, zone defense, man-to-man defense. And he, if he plays well, like he's capable, it really gives our defense a great chance to be successful.
What do you think it is that's helped him improve as a tackler? Because, in the last few weeks it has kind of stood out.
Just control. I think his pace, something that is tougher for a guy that's going outside to inside, inside to outside, is just in the slot, it's a much different pace than outside. And so just finding the right pace, you want guys in the slot to be calm. You want them to be poised because there's so much happening fast. So I think just finding that comfort zone, the pace I need to play with, because he's such a fast player. You know, he's very, very fast. And so, but you need to kind of slow down in the slot. And I think what that's allowed him to do, especially in zone defense, is be able to trigger. You've been able to really see that. And then also when he's playing man-to-man, coverage in the slot is a lot different than outside. And I think he's finding that right comfort zone, how to play this leverage, how to match this player, how physical do I want to play with him. I think he's done a nice job of settling into a good rhythm.
What's kind of the method you guys are trying to get like a young player out there, like that you also want to maximize your ability to like maybe make every single play? Like what are kind of some of the things you guys are discussing, and like how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think what's most important that they earn their way there. You know, you can't just put a guy out there that hasn't earned it. So they got to earn it on the practice field, and then when they get out in the games, you know, hopefully they're producing. So that's what this league's about, is the meritocracy. But then at the same time, if there's a role that they can, you know, fulfill that we think is going to be helpful to the team, even if it's a small role, that can get them some snaps that they otherwise wouldn't get. And so, you know, hopefully that allows them to improve, as opposed to just being a special teams player and then just practicing. You know, if we can get them a role on defense and they can play a handful of snaps in a role for us, that's the best way to improve. You know, and I think that we're trying to strike that balance, and I think that you're seeing the benefits of some of these young players that have played for us.
Does there have to be like some tolerance to like maybe more variance for like mistakes or things like that, or is if somebody's not earning it, they're just
Yeah, of course. Variance meaning, hey, if guy makes a mistake, there's a difference between an error because of lack of experience and an error because you're not good enough, you know? And I think that sometimes, you know, first-time players are going to make mistakes similar to Jonas against New England, being shallow in the post. That's a first-time mistake. And you can live with those, and you have to, you know, for any position. It doesn't matter what side of the ball. But it's from those mistakes where the most growth happens. You know, and if you saw Jonas's depth in the post last week against Chicago, he learned from those mistakes, and he's going to continue to do that. And he'll make more mistakes as he goes, but they're going to be less and less. And the most improvement comes from making them in the game and then staying with that player and then seeing the improvement because of it.
Baker said this week that he doesn't like the Saints, and he felt like it's been not clean play from them in the past. I know you weren't here last year, but a lot of the same players were. Like, what did you make of those comments whenever you heard them?
I think Baker would say it about every team they play against, not just us. That's what makes him a competitor. I don't make much of it at all. You know, it's going to be a good matchup for us on Sunday, and these division games are like that. And, you know, that's what's awesome about the NFL is that you get to figure it out between the white lines.
Do you feel the need to address it with the players at all? About this has always been an emotional, physical rivalry in the past. You know, there's been a lot of extra.
Right.
Yeah. Do you bring that up at all this week about that line, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think these guys are well aware of it, Jeff, just, you know, with how public everything is now. They're so connected to everything and everybody. And I think that within your division, these games do mean more. And there is that intensity that's real. And in terms of addressing it, you know, there's a long time between now and Sunday. We need to make sure that we have the right appetite come kickoff, not too soon. You know, we got to build our way there. But the best way to do that is to focus on us, not on them. You know, and I think in a rivalry, you know, you got to focus on yourself and make sure you're ready to play. And that's what's going to get you ready for the intensity on Sunday.
Do you see Baker really improve at a few things that stand out to you, or do you think he found the right fit, found the right coaching? I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of both, but is there anything you've really seen him do better?
Yeah, so when he went to LA in 2022 with the Rams with Sean and that group of guys, we played against them that year when I was with the Chargers. And we played against him when I was in Denver, 19. So I've really seen his growth as a player the whole way. We played against him last year when I was in San Fran. And I would say the biggest thing, and it's not uncommon to any of these guys that sort of hit their stride later, is just the experience and then the decision making just how fast he's making the decisions and how confident he is when he's making them. I think he's got a better reason than when he was younger, you know, where you're young, you maybe just get labeled as, hey, you're just going for it because that's who you are, where now I think he's sure of what he's doing, and now he's taken that confidence with experience, and now you're seeing the consistency of those fast decisions, and that's what I see is the decision making, and I think that shows up on his tape, because I think he's always had the talent, he's always had the mentality, the mindset, the competitive spirit, but he's making great decisions for their team, and he's doing a hell of a job. Like I said, he's having a hell of a season for them, and it's going to be a good matchup for us on Sunday.
As a coach, what is that line for like patience with the player versus like Baker was in Cleveland for I think at least 5 years. Like that's a long time for most guys, but yet you're seeing him later in his career now, and people say like patience. Like in the moment, it feels maybe kind of harder to.
Yeah, we play for a ton of coaches, you know, and I think with the quarterback thing that you're seeing is. He was the first pick in the draft because people felt like he was the top player in that draft. And the guys who were able to overcome it and then have a special career like he's having right now, you know, you got to be wired the right way to overcome it all. You know, you're seeing it with Sam. You saw it with like Alex Smith, you know, a Ryan Tannehill, you know, guys I'm thinking about who kind of got going later on. You got to be wired the right way to overcome it. So it's a testament to him. It's not easy. But you do need the right fit. You know, as a quarterback, as any player in this league, you're a product of your environment, you know, and I think he's been able to find the right rhythm with the right people. And I think he's always had the talent. Anyone that's been around him has a ton of respect for him. You know, I've been around all the offensive coaches that, you know quarterbacks as well as anybody, including Kellen, and we all have a lot of respect for him. All right, guys. Take care, guys.
So with the injury to Kendra Miller and him being out for the rest of the season, obviously Devin Neal kind of rise up. What can you tell us about him in terms of what you've seen from him over the course of training camp and beyond?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Devin's opportunity. Obviously a young player, so the learning curve is there. And, he's done a good job. Went through a period of time there where he really wasn't active. Now he's going to be active and he's been active, and now he's back in the flow. So that's an exciting opportunity for him. He'll prepare, he'll be ready.
What was it that maybe stood out to you all about him during the draft process that you're excited to, see him be able to try to implement this weekend?
Felt like he was one of the better protectors in the draft when you talk about pass protection. He's a smart guy. He's got good football intelligence and good instincts.
We hear that a lot. I think Alvin said the same thing. Like, he's one of the smarter players he's dealt with. Like, how does that kind of appear in a running back? Like, what does that help when you're an intelligent player?
Well, I think, it's like anything. It's hard to quantify instincts, but when you watch the tape and you watch players play, you're like, wow, how do you know to do that? Well, that was his instincts, and I think when you're watching tape, it's, because when you get into especially the evaluation process, you can see, you have hardcore answers about how big, how fast, how strong, all those things. We get those numbers, okay? Those aren't going to lie. But then when you turn on the tape, does the player play to those things? Do they have the instincts that allows them to naturally play in the flow of a game at an accelerated speed if they are a fast guy? Because some guys that run really fast on a track don't play football fast. And some guys that don't run necessarily fast on a track play football fast because they don't slow down at all. So, it's the same thing when you're talking about a guy in protection. Does he have instincts? Does he feel things? Does he see things that maybe he gets somewhere just a little bit quicker than a guy that doesn't have those type of instincts?
How does Eric McCoy's injury just impact communication on the line and just the organization of that? What do you guys have to overcome?
Well, obviously, throughout the season, communication has been something that we've preached and that we spent a lot of time with. The guys have taken a lot of pride in cleaning up some of the things that we've had issues with. And so obviously anytime you lose your center, that's a big part of it. It's a focal point for us this week. Obviously Luke's played in games, though. He knows what this is all about. And it's just about him getting in the rhythm with Spencer and with the rest of the offensive line and the perimeter players.
Is communication something that y'all have a way to work on even away from the field, or is that something that in the practice, in the midst of practice, that's where you have to work that through?
Yeah, one of the big things is you got to take advantage in pro football of your walkthroughs. So a big emphasis on our walkthrough communication that carries over into practice, that carries over into the games. But you're not going to get, the amount of time we have to practice and the amount of reps that we can actually put on the players, especially this time of year. You've got to get that, one, it's got to start in the meeting room. When we're doing the installation process, when we're talking through things, we're talking through adjustments versus a defense we're going to play and those type of things. You go out in the field, you get the walkthrough reps, where that's a big point of emphasis, making sure everything's right, communication's right, our procedure's right, and then obviously you take it to full speed in practice.
When Spencer was asked yesterday about the interceptions last week, he said he was more aggressive than he had been previously, and I guess it can be a fine line between aggressiveness and recklessness. How do you walk him through that so in a split second he can decide which is which?
Yeah, I think you have to take each particular snap and isolate that snap. You can't just say it's one overwhelming theme. You have to look at each snap and say, okay, here's why. If I get forced to roll to my left and I see a guy go ahead and take a big box up the sideline, well, remember, in the National Football League, these safeties are fast. So if I can't drive that ball and I got to hang it a little bit, that guy's going to come out of the middle of the field and probably make a play. So there's things like that that are, for a young quarterback, they're all part of the learning process.
Move forward in the Hall of Fame selection process. Just going back to losing Eric and making the adjustments with communication, how big is it to have someone who played the game at that position, at the guard position at such a high level, to be able to, assist the young players?
Jari does an excellent job for us, and he's been a big asset for us, especially, being a new staff. The amount of knowledge he has of, when we got here, of our current roster and just, he knows the history of this organization as good as anybody, and obviously a phenomenal player that really does a good job of communicating to the young players, helping them understand things, and he's done an outstanding job.
Where have you seen Tyler Shuck make the most strides in the first 7 weeks, and what have you learned over the years about the best way to help backup quarterbacks who aren't getting reps make those strides?
Yeah, it's a challenging part because obviously, in our league, the starter's going to take all the snaps, so how do you get the backup quarterback ready? And, a big part of that is trying to get them to understand, especially a young player, that the scout team is an advantage for you because you get forced to play really, really fast. Obviously, you're playing against the first-string defensive line. The hard part is that you look at the pattern concepts and those type of things. The timing with the feet and the eyes and the rhythm don't always match up. So we try to, as we go through practice, Scott Tolzien does a great job. He's with him there in those drills, talking to him, hey, let's use this timing like the route that we throw that's like this, so that we can try and build repetitions, through the scout teamwork.
Last week, that play where Devin had the blitz pick up, obviously incomplete pass or whatever, but Spencer's standing in there and having the confidence and not looking rattled as that's closing in and trusting the back. Is that just innate to a quarterback to kind of have that, or is that something that can be developed and taught?
Better have it to play in this league, because you start looking at the rush, it's over, game over. So you got to trust the guys that are around you, and that's, like I said, one of the things about Devin, just talking about, we thought he was one of the better pass protectors in college football last year. That's a big part of the game that people don't really talk about a lot with the running backs, but I promise you, defensive guys know when your back's not doing a good job protecting.
Was that pickup as good as it looked? Obviously the trained eye, the untrained eye looked pretty special. But
It was a good pickup, it really was.
He talked about how he actually had a route to run after that, but because of the game situation, he decided to stay in a little bit longer. Just what does that say to you about him? And is that a part of that intelligence factor you were talking about?
There's instincts right there. You know what I mean? Because we put the PowerPoint up, we turn on the tape and show them what it looks like on tape, but then you got to go out there and do it.
What kind of experience do you have against Todd Bowles? What are the hallmarks of his defenses?
He's a phenomenal, obviously head coach and defensive coordinator, and obviously a ton of respect for Todd. When you play Todd, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a physical game. He's going to try and eliminate the run game. He's going to put pressure on your quarterback from all the different looks he's going to present to you, and he's going to put he's going to put pressure on all your protection schemes with the different things that he does. So a lot of respect. Obviously, George Edwards is there with him that I have some exposure to. George and I were together in Dallas, so a phenomenal coach. Their defense is as well coached as anybody in this league. They do a great job, and every game we've been in with them, it's been a true fight, man.
Understanding that third and long for third and eight plus are low percentage plays. Is there any reason that is there a through line for you why y'all's percentage isn't a little bit higher on those? Because I think you got to get some of them at some point to really kind of.
Yeah, we haven't done a good enough job of putting our guys in position to capitalize, and we've had opportunities. We haven't seized the opportunities. We all got to do a better job. Obviously, where we are is not where we want to be. We need to be better, and it's a focal point for us.
How much does losing Kendra and now going to a younger player affect Alvin in the sense that you have to figure out how much you can lean on Alvin while he's dealing with an ankle injury? How many snaps you can give him?
I think we do that every week, even when Kendra was healthy, and there's other ways that, you look at supplementing how many snaps, okay, Alvin's in, Devin's in, and where are the carries coming? Are they perimeter carries? Are they inside the tackle carries? So we, we're always cautious of that and have been the first, few games here, and we'll continue to do so.
What's the significance of counting the inside carries separately from the outside carries?
Well, a lot of times the perimeter carries, you're in space. Back has a lot more feel. It's kind of like you start running between the tackles. We know what's going to happen, right? There's going to be some heavyweight collisions in there. A lot of times, some of the perimeter runs, when you're talking about your toss cracks schemes and the G schemes where you're out there in space, the back's not usually taking as many of those downhill, slugs that they're going to get when you run between the tackles on a downhill duo play or that type of thing.
Can you just talk a little about Luke and what you've been working with him over the past, however long, Luke Fortner, he's going to step in this week. What has been your experience working with him?
Yeah, I remember when we made the trade for him when he showed up, you could tell, he's a pro. He's been around, and he's got to start a lot of games in this league. He knows this is what he does, and, like I said, it's obviously disappointed for Eric and his injury, obviously. That's, for him, it's tragic, and we all feel for him and are with him. But, I've got a lot of confidence in Luke.
When you have another center stepping in, they might communicate a little differently, I assume, based on verbiage and things like that. Do you try to universalize that as much as possible, or does that individual nature factor?
No, it's all the communication is standardized. You can't, it's the same thing with the quarterbacks, right? The quarterbacks all have to have a standardized snap count. You can't have one guy do it one way, another guy do it the other way. You're going to have false starts, So that's something we focus on a lot too. So no, the centers, all the calls and all those things stay the same.
Are there any differences at all that factor in? Like with quarterbacks, sometimes I guess cadence is a thing that we hear talked about. Is there such a thing with centers?
There's a lot of little nuances that, that show up, just because they all have kind of their own way that they paint their picture, so to say, when they're playing center, and so some guys are just a tad bit faster on the snap count. Some guys are just a tad bit. It's just those little nuances that people probably don't see much, but that the players know exist, and that's a big part of the communication. We got to get that home, and that's been a big focus this week.
In short yardage in particular, is Taysom a guy that you're maybe worried about telegraphing something, or is it just get the ball in his hands and get downhill? And is Taysom, possibly a way that you guys anticipate sort of filling the void, so to speak, with Kendrick injured?
Well, hopefully, we have enough diversity in our offense that, not one player dictates certain things. Now there's a lot of coaches too, also that'll say if you don't have any tendencies, that means you're not good at anything. So, it's okay to have some tendencies in things you do, but hopefully we've got some answers in everything we do that they don't just say, okay, this guy's there, this is exactly what's going to happen.
Whose line was that? I never heard that one.
I believe it was Chuck Knoll. The old Tom Moore.
Thank you.